Hello, all you boys and girls. I'd like to take you to the inside world. Any Primus fans out there? How's it going, everybody? Welcome to a little D&D-O short. For those of you who have been watching my channel or listening to my channel for a while now, you know that I really like to do character builds based on sustained damage per round, DPR. Damage that is not super dependent on using up lots of resources to do that level of damage round after round after round. So sustainable, right? In fact, to date, of the 27 full builds that I've done so far, over half of them, 13 of the characters, over half of them have been done on a single character sustained damage. It leaves us with 13 because the Beastmaster got 2 episodes and so did the Bladesinger. Anyway, over half of the episodes have been on a single character sustained damage focus. And, hopefully you've all seen the graphs that I put together for each episode. And particularly the one that sort of compares my builds to each other, right? The master sustained damage graph or whatever. For those familiar with it, you may have been noticing lately that graph is getting really crowded, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish each build from one another because I'm running out of unique colors that look different enough, and a lot of the lines kind of overlap one another and things. It's getting a little crowded. And so I think it's time to maybe start to create tiers amongst at least the sustained damage per round builds that I've done. I'm sure, tanks and duos and things like that will maybe get there eventually. Nova builds, for now I don't have as many of them, so there's more room in the comparison graphs. But for the sustained damage per round graphs, I need to start breaking them up. So I'm going to do that. I thought it might be fun to, kind of do a little short episode where I kind of rank all of my sustained damage per round builds thus far, and do a little ranking show. So that's what we're doing today. Now, the way that I determined the ranking was really fairly simple. I took the average damage that a build does across all enemy armor classes, or at least that I account for, right? Enemy AC of 10 to 25. And across all character levels, again, at least that I account for. As you guys know, I do a damage report at level 6, level 9, level 13, and level 17, right? So all enemy ACs and at those levels, and just averaged them all together to get one single number, to sort of give us, if admittedly an overly simplified way, but at least a number, a way nonetheless, to kind of say, okay, here's sort of the average damage, sustained damage per round that this character does, sort of against all variety of enemies, and at sort of throughout their life span, right? At all the different levels and things. I think this is important to kind of look at it that way if we're going to be talking about and thinking about the sort of relative power of one character versus another. Just because, again, as we mention a lot on this channel, so many people, I think, when they're trying to determine how strong a character is, how much damage a character can do, they tend to say, well, at level 20, this character can do blah, blah, blah. And again, like, who plays the game at level 20? Hardly anybody, right? So what's the point in that? I don't know. And also, people tend to say, well, this character can do X amount of damage, but more often than not, it seems like they are just saying if all of their attacks land, they will do X amount of damage. And I think that's a little disingenuous, or at least a little obtuse, whether intentional or not, because as we know, not all enemies are created equal, and the likelihood of us always going up against armies of enemies that have very low armor class or saving throws, and so we can therefore just assume that all of our attacks are going to land. That never happens, right? The likelihood of that happening is slim. And so, again, we like to account for character level, we like to account for enemy armor class, kind of look at all of those and try and find like an aggregate number of, what this character can expect to do, over their lifetime against all kinds of different enemy types. So let us do that. So for right now, I've just got 2 tiers. Later, maybe in the future, I might break that up into more. I think two's enough for now. And I want to start at the bottom and work our way up to create more drama. Also note that these numbers are based on the revamp that I did for the changes that were introduced with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and the changes that I made to some of the older episodes. So for full details, at least on the older episodes prior to, mid-November of 2020, I guess, you'll want to watch the original video, but then also the updated How Tasha's Changes Everything videos to kind of get the full details on the build if you're not familiar with them. For everybody else, let's go. So tier 2, starting with tier 2 and coming in at number 13, the lowest sustained damage per round on average build that I've created this far is going to probably surprise a lot of you, I would think, and it is the mounted battlesmith, coming in at just 39 damage per round on average, sustainable throughout, again, the character's life cycle. This was the most often requested build that I had, at least to date when I recorded it, and I think the reality is, dual wielding D12 weapons is just not as amazing in practice as it really seemed on paper. So anyway, we're not here to debate that. I'm sure plenty of you will say, well, you did it wrong. If you would have done it this way, they would be the best. At number 12, coming in at 41 sustained damage per round, we have the Munger, the Monk Ranger. This probably surprises none of you, but it breaks my heart because I want monks to be good. I want it so bad. I love monks. Come on, Aang, represent. Unfortunately, The Last Airbender is not a character in D&D, or he would be the best. Maybe I need to make a Last Airbender build. Future episode idea. Anyway, at number 11, also with 41 sustained damage per round, but if you pull out the decimals, they win by just a fraction. We have the sorcerer with the magic touch sorcerer that I did just a few weeks ago. I don't feel too bad about this one being kind of at the bottom because I put some pretty challenging limitations on myself in the name of roleplay and story and character, and I was just kind of happy to get it to be competitive. So anyway, the sorcerer with the magic touch at number 10 with an average damage per round of 46. We have our first bard, the Bard Locker. Remember, I actually tried really hard with this character to sort of keep them as bardy as possible, and still let them be, the all singing, all dancing crap of the world, and give them sort of as much damage as I could. And so I was pretty pleased with how the numbers turned out for that character. Coming in at number 9 with 49 average sustained damage per round, we have the oft maligned but much improved Beastmaster. This, of course, is the Beastmaster 2.0. The original Beastmaster video that I did, I'm positive would be in very last place. And I can't imagine anybody post Tasha's actually creating a Beastmaster using the old sort of companion rules, even though I'm about to do that for the video that I'm going to release tomorrow. Slight spoiler warning. So I'm eating my words there. But anyway, this character, the Beastmaster, definitely wins the Most Improved Player Award for 2020. So good job, Beastmaster. And thank you, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. At number 8, with 53 sustained damage per round, surprising many, I would guess, of the veteran min-maxers of the D&D 5e community, if they actually watch this show, they'd probably be surprised. The crossbow expert sharpshooter ranged fighter. This was the second episode that I did, and I remember at the time, a lot of people, most people it seemed like that I read were like, this is the cream of the crop for sustained damage per round, or at least it's one of the best, right? I think in the end, this character was a great example to me of sort of the importance of advantage. And I think it was its greatest weakness is not having a reliable way to get advantage. And so, their damage would start really high at a low enemy armor class, but it falls fairly steeply as the enemy armor class increases due to that lack of advantage that they have when compared to, other builds that we've done. So, I think if I were to try and recreate this character in game today, that would be sort of my first goal would be to try and find a way to get them advantage consistently. And it's not easy because they were ranged, and so you couldn't just throw in some barbarian levels or anything. Anyway, at number 7, leading over all the other tier 2 builds, we have the Sorkadin, the Blast Lock, the Eldritch Sorcerer, right? You know what? A little bit of trivia, actually. This is actually the character that inspired me to start this channel in the first place. I read a while ago, last summer, this forum post that somebody made. I don't even remember who. I don't even know if I could find it today. But anyway, they were arguing that the Sorkadin, the Blast Lock, was the best sustained damage per round character that you could make in D&D 5e, and when you accounted for enemy armor class. And I kind of thought, I wonder if that's true. And so I tried to create one as powerful as I could, and I kind of tried to round up all the other sort of commonly thought of as strongest sustained damage builds in D&D and started to try and create them and compare them to one another and graph them. And I was kind of like, this is not only fun and at least interesting for me, but I bet you there's an audience that would be interested in this too. So anyway, I have the Sorkadin to thank for that. They are well. I'm happy to report. I think that guy, whoever it was wrong. But I'm grateful to the Sorkadin nonetheless. Congratulations, Eldritch Sorcerer. You are the best of all the second placers. And of course, right, this list here is a little bit silly in a way. Like there's none of these characters actually fight in a vacuum. There's so much more to the game and to a character than just how much sustained damage per round can they do. One great thing about the Sorkadin, for example, is that they can do good damage, but also provides fantastic support and versatility to their team and things. So anyway, we all love ranking stuff, and if you just want to talk about sustained damage per round, well, this is a fun little exercise. So let's move on to Tier 1. Tier 1. Bringing up the rear of the Tier 1 characters, coming in at number 6. We have, with 55 average sustained damage per round, this one actually surprised me. I would have thought it would be higher, but the Fightarian, the Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, Fighter Barbarian. I think this character was maybe the most negatively impacted by by the changes from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, specifically the Rune Knight nerf. They would probably be way higher otherwise, but again, still very strong. I played this character in a campaign as well, and it was fun and ridiculous. At number 5, with 58 average sustained damage per round, we have one of my favorites, the Swashbuckler Rogue. This character actually got a really nice bump from the changes to Beastmaster in Tasha's, putting them over many builds that they were previously would have fallen below. With the vast majority of this character's damage coming from one single huge attack every round, but that was made with triple advantage thanks to Elven accuracy, they have one of the flattest damage arcs of any character that I've ever done. And flat is good for us, right? As the enemy armor class increases, the damage per round barely decreases. The only one who is flatter is also the most problematic build I've done, I think, to date, number 4, with 67 damage per round on average, the Grappler. The Grappler monk, mostly monk. I really hesitate, to be honest with you, to even rank this character as high as I do. Like I've said, of all the builds that I've done, this one is the one I'm most uncomfortable with sort of recommending that someone try to play it as is in game. Yes, if you were fighting target dummies or in a world where enemies never tried to attack you for some reason, even though you have them grappled and they can't really even attack anybody else, then those numbers are accurate and you could expect to do as much damage as I show. But, the reality is in game, it just would very rarely work as well as the numbers would show. Due mostly to the fragility of the damage you get from the Spores Druid. I failed to account for the change to the Spores Druid in Tasha's that takes away the damage that you get when your temporary hit points from that circle expire. And if you're interested to see a revamp of the build, I actually did post in a thread on the subreddit some changes that I would make to the build to make it a little more practical in game, and I think it works. It still works very well, but it would reduce the damage. It probably drop this character down to tier 2. I'm almost positive. That said, the video's up. I'm not going to take the video down. It is what it is. We just have to take these numbers with a little grain of salt. So, moving on to the top 3, the Podium Reachers, taking home the bronze medal with 68 average sustained damage per round. The character that I bet most D&D 5e min-maxers would consider to be the cream of the sustained damage per round crop. The Hexblade Warlock, the Pamlock. My very first build on the show. For what it's worth, at lower levels and at lower enemy armor classes, the Hexblade really is kind of the bee's knees, but they do taper off a wee bit as they level when compared to these last two, and as enemy armor class increases. So anyway, still incredibly strong, and that damage is, for the most part, quite sustainable. The Silver Medalist, second place with 75 average damage per round. The Dark and Brooding One, the Cure Fan, the Goth Emo Death Cleric. Now, of course, when I crunched numbers for this build, I assumed that every round you were fighting 2 enemies who were standing next to each other. The numbers here are going to swing fairly widely depending on how many targets you're facing, how close they're standing together, etc. That said, I am playing this character in one of our campaigns right now. We just played it 2 nights ago, and we had this combat encounter that felt like it was just designed especially for me. So thank you, Preston, for letting me have my moment in the spotlight. We were packed into a room, and there were like 7 or 8 murloc-y fish creatures, and I mean, it was, between spirit guardian, spiritual weapon, and hitting 2 characters with Toll the Dead every single round. It was a glorious eyeliner infused, bangs hanging over one eye death fest. I fully expect that there will be plenty of future fights against 1 or 2 really strong enemies who aren't standing close to each other, and my own damage per round numbers will fall through the floor. But man, the other night it was insanity, and it was a lot of fun. At number 1, the gold medal champion, of course, my darling, my favorite, and most of my viewers' favorite, too, judging by the number of views and likes and comments, is the gish of all gishes, the Blade Singer. The fine print on the Blade Singer, of course, is that, when I calculated for sustained damage per round, I cheated just a wee bit. I always pretended that the numbers I showed were truly sustainable. The reality is they were always dependent upon using your highest level spell slot in combat, and especially at higher levels, with level 7, 8, and 9 spells, you're only getting 1 of those per long rest, and so you could make the argument, well, these numbers aren't truly sustainable. Sustainable over an entire combat encounter, yes, and so sustainable, but maybe not sustainable over an entire day, unless, of course, your dungeon master tends to give you 1 really hard combat encounter per day and then give you a long rest, which some do. But anyway, to be fair, you could make the same argument about a lot of the builds that I've done. In fact, I think the Death Cleric, definitely, the Pamlock, Hexblade, I think by level 17, I was counting Hexblade's Curse on every target that you ever fight, even though I think you can only use it over an entire counter, but once per short rest. Is that right? Anyway, at the end of the day, the thing about the Blade Singer that makes it so amazing, and I'm sure many of you would agree, is not just the fantastic sustained damage per round that they do, but the incredible versatility, mobility, and even tankiness, survivability at least, that they bring. Having a full suite of wizard spells, coupled with some really nice subclass buffs to your defensive capabilities, just make this character so much fun to play in game. And if you haven't done so, I highly recommend that you consider it for an upcoming session. So that's our ranking for the builds that I've done. Thanks for watching. A little teaser for as I sign off for the video that I'm about to release tomorrow, if everything goes according to plan. I'm pretty sure that the build I'm going to do for tomorrow is going to fit into the tier 1 ranking. It is a sustained damage per round character. And if that ends up being true, it will be a complete and total shocker to me, because I did not anticipate it as I was beginning to create the character. I might end up being wrong. I don't think I am, but I haven't finalized it yet. I haven't finished crunching all of the numbers. So tune in tomorrow and find out if I'm right. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks, and hope you have a fantastic day, and we will see you soon.